Hey, welcome once again to Rise of the GM, where we are having a Thanksgiving Day special. We're going to be talking about the use of feasts and a whole lot more here on this one-of-a-kind new episode for Thanksgiving. Well, hey, Adam, it is good to be with you again. We are here, just like I said in the intro, we're here a few days early. It's a Monday before Thanksgiving, but we are not going to be here on the Day of the Bird because we're going to be celebrating with various family members of our own, having Thanksgiving Day feast. But we didn't want to forget all of you at the same time, all you ascending GMs who are like, I need something to listen to. Now, obviously, this is live on Monday. So if you really need it on Thursday, wait, don't watch it now. Go back and watch it on Thursday. We did start this like 2 other times, and I had a setting wrong, and so it'd like start to go live, and I would just turn it off. And so you probably have been notified by YouTube. It's like, hey, Rise of the GM's going live. Psych. Hey, Rise of the GM's going live. Psych. But this time we are live, and we're here to do a Thanksgiving special, and I'm going to let Adam kind of tell you what that is and what it's about. So, Adam, what's our special about today? It's going to be a little bit shorter, but what is it?
So thinking about feasts and celebration, and hello, Josh Morton. Thanks for joining us live here. Glad to see you. So feasts and celebrations and games, kind of, thinking about, like, for us, we're going into, this is Thanksgiving week for us, going into that celebration. And Matthew, I realized like a few moments ago, actually, that I always thought about, like Thanksgiving being United States, Canada, like a North American kind of thing. But did you know that there are like places all over the world that celebrate Thanksgiving as we do? Because like people like from, it's like American, I was reading about one, it's like American whaling ships landed at this place one time, and now it like celebrates Thanksgiving every year. I think that's crazy. Yeah. So yeah. I blew my mind. So that was kind of interesting.
You told me something I didn't know.
Yeah.
I never really thought much about it.
Yeah. Me neither. So the idea was, we're going to have a little bit shorter episode here. We're not doing the NPC from Masks. We're not going to talk about the Eureka encounter this time around. Kind of just focusing in on one topic, and that's the idea of feasts and celebrations or festivals, those kind of things in our games. And the kind of way I wanted to walk through that today was thinking about, like, why would we even do that? That may be a thing if you're a GM out there who's maybe been doing it for a while, or if you're brand new at this or like wanting to start, it's like, well, why would I even add like a festival or a feast or a celebration like that to my game? And then we're going to talk a little bit about maybe ways that that's happened, like in our games, if that's taken place. And then at the end, I wanted to share a few like more canon D&D or canon like Pathfinder ones that I've looked at recently, just as kind of prep for this. So maybe that'll spark some interest too, or some ideas. So why would we do this? Is that a thing that's like in your mind, Matthew, as you're thinking about that? Like, why add these to games in your mind?
Yeah. Well, for me, and there's probably lots of different reasons, but I was just trying to think of reasons that I have in the past, or reasons that I would incorporate some huge feast. And so I think for me, the feast gives you an opportunity to have a different kind of encounter, a different kind of feel. So many of our encounters, you're going through a woods, or you're going through a dungeon, there's an attack, there's a battle, whatever. Or you're dealing with the people who are in town who are setting you up for a specific encounter or hiring you or whatever that is. But the feast offers an opportunity for some of the parts of D&D that sometimes we don't use as often. And so for me, one of the things I think of first when I think of feast is it gives a chance for various kinds of skill rolls. Whatever this feast is, I think recently you just had a wedding feast sort of thing in a game. Once I had a hunting feast where this is the Brunhike. where we had a young boy who was the chieftain's son who was going out on his first hunt, and the ones who came back with a kill of these giant dire lions or whatever they were. Um, they were set to be in leadership. Those who just came back alive were going to be like in the tribe somewhere, and those who died obviously had no place in the tribe and shamed their whole family, whatever. And so there was this hunt that was part of the feast, and they were excited. And the chief kind of pulls you aside and says, "Listen, my son needs to have a kill. You guys are going to make sure he has a kill." And so we went with him, and there was that whole thing. But it gave us a chance to have some structure of something else going on in the world. And then in that place, you can do lots of stuff. So whether it's your wedding feast, I know we did some of this, or here, or whatever feast it is, there are those social roles where you get a chance to practice things like your diplomacy and your
Right.
manipulation and your ability to fool people. And I'm forgetting all the names of these different skill roles as I'm doing it because I've been in too many systems. But you'll have these chances to roll to like lie to people. You have these chances to roll to try and manipulate them. You have these chances to roll and try and persuade them. All these things
Right.
we use rarely, but this can be a greater moment of those. Now, the problem is it can also, if you're not careful, that can get really boring as you're dealing with one player for like 10 minutes about their conversation with this person, and the other people are just sitting there like, ho hum. And so you have to be careful about how you do this. I wouldn't just like say, okay, I'm going to give everybody like these social manipulation roles, whether it's lying, persuading, whatever.
Right.
And I'm going to do that 10 minutes, then 10 minutes, then 10 minutes, 10 minutes. That's going to be like I think you need to sprinkle those in with little fits and starts of actions. And
Yeah.
there can be different kinds of actions that happen in these feasts as well. This can be just like any kind of crowded city thing. Say you have a New Year's feast celebration in this place, and there's people from everywhere. That's perfect chance for people who want to like get out and do some pickpocketing, or people who want to get out
Right.
and maybe you have a guy who is an assassin, and his whole thing is to draw out and like assassinate somebody in the midst of something huge. That could be. So it offers opportunities for interaction that you don't always get to do every single game where a bunch of orcs pile in. A bunch of orcs pile in and you're in some place, or even like say you're in the city and a bunch of guards attack you. You can't be pulling off an assassination there. There's no silence. There's no surprise. You can't be doing pickpocketing while you're being hit. You can't be like persuading people who are swinging a sword at you the same way. So this gives an opportunity for some of those, and I think that's
Yeah.
like one of the biggest places that I've probably incorporated feasts in my games, to give those opportunities for stealth and to give those opportunities for
Yeah.
social interaction and story expansion even. So like I talked about how the Brunhike was supposed to go on this hunt, and the chieftain, the dad, wanted to make sure that he was successful. So you guys were pulled in, but this could even play into. I think I played in a character that Evan had going once. I played a guy who took a vow of poverty. So I had no armor, and I was a monk, so I didn't need this, but I had no armor, I had no weapon, I had no stuff, and I had a vow of poverty. I would never have more than, it was some ridiculously low amount of gold. And if I got over that, I would lose the benefits of my vow of poverty.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I was constantly, my whole thing was, I was fighting for those people who didn't have anything. And so, man, seeing a feast where all these people are gluttonous and shoving themselves full of food while there's these people over here who have nothing. Oh,
Right.
man, that gives me a chance to play into that in lots of different ways. Or let's say somebody has a relationship to the royalty in this area, but it's
Right.
unknown, or to the tribe or whatever. The place of the feast can be an interesting place for all that to come out. So I'm going to stop for a moment and let you kind of speak into some of these, because I'm just throwing out random things that I have thought about with feasts.
Yeah, that's really good. I remember that the hunt feast, like that's like one that's like very much sticks in, I think, our whole group's brains, of that of it was a thing where there was celebration and action like mixed into that. And I definitely like that's one that's there as like kind of a core memory for me. I was thinking about like the why, and I'm sure there's a lot more than what I'm about to lay out, but from like a larger kind of zoomed out level for me, like one of the things is, and I think you've talked into that, is just like the world building and the world being fleshed out more. Of it's not just this flat place where it's just the drudgery of life constantly, and it's always the same, nothing changes. So when you have these feasts, it could be like a smaller scale if it's like this specific people, or it could be more broad. I think that shows like the world being like richer in that way, and things do change, even if it's like that one of the ones I had recently, it's like you came back into town and there's banners up everywhere, and it's like, okay, something's different because the GM keeps saying there's black banners hanging everywhere. By the way, did you see the black banners? And like just like it sets the scene a little differently, and does give you that opportunity to like to engage in different ways. The players, and Josh is saying that sometimes these feasts and festivals help the player to do some of the world building too. And I agree, because that, for me, I'm kind of getting into one of the things, but the way that you're going to interact as like a player. So if players start interacting with the festival, that gives the GM a chance to flesh that out more as well. It's like, well, I didn't really think about all the vendors that are here for this thing, but now as they're looking around, deciding they want to find the mincemeat pies, it's like, well, now there's a guy over here that, is selling that kind of thing. So even like, and some of it gets into the way festivals are used, and even we use them in real life, but like, that can also like lead into like a season change and be a good transition of like, so many festivals and holidays are like, midsummer, or like, it's like the changing of in the fall into winter, or those kind of things. I think you can kind of even like set some time, and time is actually passing. We're not in just like this one
Timelessness.
summer. Yeah. Time. It's like that kind of gets lost sometimes in the midst of everything else. So it kind of helps the year to move, that time is actually passing. Kind of coming out of last week's thing, like I think an arc change can be designated by a feast, like from just a storytelling aspect of whether it's a holiday or whether it's like this is like a feast you've been invited to. There's a good ability to shift from that. And then like another kind of bigger reason that I would use a feast, I think, and why I do this is like character, like specific, like looking at a character and saying this is an opportunity for them to grow and develop or take part in. So I don't know, like any of that stuff kind of trigger things for you.
Yeah, I think as you were talking about the transition between arcs, I think a feast can be one of those moments. It's almost like a cutscene in a video game.
Yeah.
Where this thing is happening. And because this is a momentous time, these are times when bigger things can happen in the world that affect everyone. So like you were having this festival of was it the Raven Queen that we totally skipped out on? Putting all these black banners around and our people left before it happened or something. We're underground. But those can be like really cool. I mean, you think about like how we really have festivals and the meanings behind those. There's a sense of greater in that. There's a sense of wonder. And those times can be a place where the outside world and forces that are bigger and events that are bigger kind of intrude on our characters' lives. And, something that happens between the Dark Queen and just the world, they can be spectators in that. They can see and then decide to take agency one way or another and get involved themselves. So sure. I do think that it gives that sense of history to your world because you can bring in like stuff that has underpinnings for the past. Again, gives that sense of this is more than just like a sandbox that I threw you in. And it can give a sense of opening future and what that's going to be as well.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things I think I love it most for that, like world development for just like having that in the background and showing those things and making like this, there is more going on than what we see in front of us. There's like a meta thing I think that like feasts can play a role in, and that's like just the pace of the game. Because sometimes, I look back at that first game and I don't know exactly what it was, but I remember specifically in the first campaign I ever played in, there were like downtime moments where it was like, hey, like you're going to be in the city for a month and we're not going to play all that out, but like, what do you want to do? And we would like, well, I'm going to go design
Sharpen my
some,
sword for a
yeah,
whole
it's like,
month.
I'm going to,
It's gonna be a nubbin.
learn some skills, or I'm going to go, I'm going to go work on a ship or the docks for a month and make some
Right.
money so I can buy a health potion before we leave again, or whatever that is. I'm going to carouse for a bit. I don't know what it was, but I don't recall that so much in more recent games like that. And part of it's like, I think there's like a building of urgency that like when I'm GMing, I'm tending to like want that. It's like, there's a continual building of the world is in dire straits. I'm probably not going to go sit in a tavern for the next month while it all burns down around me until I'm ready to roll again, kind of thing. But I think like because of that, there's like an intensity level sometimes of maybe either for like creative juices for the DM, the GM, or even like the players. I think sometimes you can get a little shell shocked where it's like, okay, I'm going into a dungeon again. Okay, I'm going in a dungeon again, and there's not like relief there. So sometimes you can have even from a meta standpoint, the pacing, if like, okay, we're going to have there's a feast that you've been invited to, that does change things. And it's like you were saying right at the beginning, Matthew, where it's like these skills that maybe aren't being flexed as much get to be put to use. Social interactions get to happen rather than just the swinging of sword and the throwing of fire, kind of thing. So I like that a lot from like a kind of a GM tool to like change up things a bit when it works. But then I was thinking about like on the micro level too, and I think it plays into what you were saying of just the like what's involved in like a feast or celebration. You get a chance to like bring in people from all over the world. Like travelers would come in for feasts. So maybe there would be like a mixing of rumors, or, hey, this is going on in this kingdom that you didn't know about, or, like that kind of interactions, different things. You can bring more story in than the people who are always here would know. I mentioned vendors earlier. That's like another thing, or even like unique items or culture, things like that stuff can kind of come in and again broaden the world out a little bit. Things like oh wow, I just lost the word. Like soothsayers or like fortune tellers kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Of that's a way to like even put in a new story element of, yeah, there's this fortune teller over here that has something to say, and that like that's like a moment of prophecy where it's like this little thing, it was going to be just a social interaction, but now it's become like a bigger thing. Or one of my favorites, and actually I think like I don't want to step on your stuff, but competitions, which I've seen you do, and I like that a lot too, is that's a great place to put a competition in. So I don't want to steal your story about that, but like, have you used? You want to talk about that a little bit?
Story, unless you're talking about the wizarding competition.
Yes.
Yeah, I totally forgot about that. You're not stealing anything. Yeah, I had a time where they came upon a group of wizards where there was this. I forget. I can't even remember much about it. Like a 3-day festival of all these wizarding things going on, and it's just like a big gathering of wizards, and they would have all these competitions.
Yeah.
I don't even remember what I did with that too much, except for I remember somebody got hit so hard in the chest with a boulder that it likely killed them or almost killed them or something.
Yeah.
I remember it, but I don't. So why don't
Yeah.
you go ahead and steal that thunder?
Well, that's about what I have. So, yeah, I think like that's kind of the bigger, like here's some reasons why, but kind of as we transition, like into like how have we used this?
Yeah, for me, that one particularly was, I just thought it was interesting for you guys to come. Think of like a Woodstock area. This was
Mhm,
like a
mhm.
festival going on that you guys had no idea what you were walking into. You just kind of started
Yeah,
walking into the fringes of tents and all these people, and you started seeing like crazy things going on as far as like lots of little magical, but it just almost seemed nonsensical, some of it. And as you got in, there were stages, and then you realized that it was like this full on gathering of wizards, like a Woodstock thing, where they
yeah,
just get
yeah.
together and they do things. And then there's these contests, and there's a panel of judges that are great wizards. And at the end, did they bestow anything on any of you? Did somebody win anything? I feel like that
I
was
think
part of it.
someone did, but I don't remember what the actual.
We'd have to ask Brandon or Ben because I feel
Yeah,
like they were involved in
yeah.
that.
Josh says that
Anyway,
Ben was the one that took the boulder into the chest. So
Ben took the
yeah,
boulder. But anyway, yeah,
I
I
like.
I remember that being there. Just again, for me, it was like this might be the kind of thing you just wander across and you're like, what the
Mhm.
heck? And there's not really a purpose for you to be there. It's not like you must come and find this, and because of this, secrets will be imparted. It's just like you wandered through, you may get something from it, and then you
Yeah,
wander out, you know?
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's
for
like that
sure.
was weird. We just wandered through Magic Woodstock. But
Yeah, that was definitely one of those. Like I had an expectation, and it got oh wow, subverted. Like my expectations were subverted because we were kind of like in the mountains
mhm.
wandering through that. I think we'd had some like fights with some giants or something at that point, and then it's like, all right, we got to find this cave to figure out because we're like had a specific thing we're looking for,
Mhm.
and then it's like, who are all these people, and like, how do we get involved? So that was cool to watch that happen and see
And kind
specific
of
people.
going off of that.
Mhm.
So we've been talking about just like how feasts, can be used kind of in a generic sense, but you can, and you can do a search online about like Thanksgiving one shots and you can find all kinds of stuff.
Mhm.
But like you can do a thing where you come to this time of the year and your players are going to have their regular meeting day and it's close to Thanksgiving, and you can incorporate some of this, and suddenly they realize as they're moving through it, it's like, oh no, this is like Thanksgiving
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
I think I saw one I liked before. It was called Turkey Uprising. It, it was called. This was just a guy who like threw out a little idea. It wasn't
Mhm.
like a full blown encounter, but he's like, you go down into this town and you see like all these feast tables sitting out with food just left, and maybe flies starting to buzz around, and you may have seen like a curtain move or a door
Mhm.
close. Just then you look and there's nobody there, and you come down and it seems like what was a feast going on, and it's deserted, and you're knocking at doors and nobody's answering, and finally somebody bravens from inside. You hear a loud whisper. It's like, the corn will soon be depleted. And you're like, what in the world? And then all of a sudden, the skies are filled with turkeys, and you take like an owl, a dire owl or something, you change it to a template of a dire turkey, and you have all these turkeys just coming in, and you can do it in lots of ways. And so like I remember thinking, oh, this would be cool, our characters happen to come up on this town and the people are all hiding inside in fear, and that whispered warning comes out, and then all of a sudden the skies are just full of all these turkeys that have come out of a local field where they had been feasting on corn, and the people realize that they're coming this way. So it's like this cicada, it's like the
Yeah, yeah,
skies are
yeah.
filled, and so you just drop, you see them like crashing in and like eating a bunch of this food, and they're
That's
bigger than normal,
hilarious.
but they're like turkeys, which are not the most fierce or scary looking things. And they come in and you throw maybe 10 at your players, and they have to like fight off these 10 dire turkeys,
Uh-huh.
and the dire turkeys have sorts of abilities that you give them, and they have to fight through that. And then there can even be like character, different kinds of characters that come up in there. So for instance, let's see, they had I had found this where you have your dire turkeys that have like their normal attacks, like they'll have a beak and they'll have their
Mhm.
claws and stuff like that. But since they're turkey and they have tryptophan, they also have this ability to put people to sleep with their attacks, right? Because you get real drowsy after, unless
Uh-huh.
unless you're an elf, I guess, who can't be magically put to sleep.
Yeah.
But maybe tryptophan sleep is different than magical
Yep.
sleep.
Yep. Oh, definitely.
Maybe even dwarves because it's biological. So I mean, elves, even elves can be put to sleep, and for the first time in their life, they get this fear of sleep. They're like, "What? I
Mhm.
don't know," and they have these haunting warbles, that they can pull out as one of their attacks.
Oh man.
And then you can have how you have Cthulhu, you have Chthurki. It's like this big turkey with tentacles hanging out of its gobbler there,
Uh-huh.
and
Uh-huh.
it can not only do tentacle attacks, but it has like the ability to have a stench, a
Oh wow.
stench attack, or
Uh-huh.
maybe it smells so good that it charms you, and you're
Wow.
like food, and you come after the food, and then there's all these like little poultrygeist running around. So it's like they're like ghost type birds that
Mhm.
are like flying around. The ones that have been killed have turned into like
Wow.
small little and so they're undead, or they're like what is that when they're not? It's like a ghost. What is that?
Zombies or ghosts or
There's a word.
specter?
It's when you have a sword that'll hit like,
Oh,
yeah, you
wow.
can think of it too, right?
Ethereal?
Ethereal, right? Like these
Yeah.
ethereal gobbling creatures, and you can only hit them in certain ways, and yeah,
That's
they'll have
amazing.
they have a spell that like every once in a while they can like shoot the food that's on the table with this necrotic energy ray and bring it
Mhm.
back to life, and it's like zombie birds. You had all these turkeys that people had cooked
Yeah.
up, and boars and calves, and they all kind of come back to life, and they're like coming after people, and so your clerics can get in on the undead. And oh, there's my son. He snuck into the podcast. Hey, I'm on air, buddy. Going out. So they're in the
Hello.
other room. Their mom's busy today.
Yeah,
Anyway,
incorporeal. Josh saying incorporeal. That's the like technical.
incorporeal,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And you have undead creatures then coming back, and you have this huge fight with all these turkey, and so that could be like a little fun thing as they're going through, and they just wander upon this town where people seem scared out of their minds, and there's this turkey attack and
yeah.
all these different kinds of turkeys, turkey related stuff, and you could have that near Thanksgiving, and it
Mhm.
could just be a fun little one shot where every time something comes out, people are like, "Oh my goodness, that's so funny!" And you can have different attacks based on turkeys.
Yeah, yeah.
So we said we weren't going to drop any encounter possibilities on you,
Right.
but there you go. We dropped one anyway. A little
That
encounter.
is
But
that
you
is
can find all kinds of things like this. So not only just like your generic feasts,
right.
but like specifically, since we're in Thanksgiving week, you could have Thanksgiving type one shot. But that gets a little bit on the campy side. So
Mhm.
you may not want to take your game there, or you may. It just
Yeah.
depends on the character of your game. If your game is super serious, that might be too cutesy.
Right.
If
Yeah.
your game has some camp in it, then that might just fit right in with your characters.
Yeah. Last year, almost a year ago, we had a night where several people couldn't come, and kind of sharing a little more because I think this may be part of a one shot module that comes out. But um, Josh and Brandon's characters were there, and they had a Krampus encounter around Christmas time. So like that was one where I don't think I'd want to go there all the time, but I think it's fun to like pull out of there and kind of just kind of have some goof, for a little while. But looking at like some of the ones that like I was just going to name off some of the feast things that I've done. You named that one, which I actually hadn't thought about this week. There's my train again.
There's the
So
train. You have
um,
a feast of the trains, right?
Feast of the Trains. You lay down your sacrifices on the tracks and let them run up. No, so that like wedding feast, and I think it was like the reasons that the different reasons for why to do this. It was like important to me, and they all had. I have like four I'm going to share, but
Adam just shakes his head every time
yeah.
that train.
So
For
they're
those of you
extra
who can't
loud
see.
today too. So I apologize for everybody listening or watching for this. That this is part of this. So the wedding feast that Matthew you mentioned earlier, that was definitely. So that was like your character's brother who was getting married. So there was definitely like a backstory tie-in that was supposed to be at least showing that, and not to get like crazy into it, but like you and he had not a great relationship, and part of, honestly, kind of pulling back the veil, like part of it was wanting to like subvert even some of that like antagonism in different
Hmm.
ways while you were engaging with him, and not like make him like, oh no, he was misunderstood, he was an awesome dude all along, but like to try to show a little more humanity, if that's the right word, for him, so that it got a little more complex too. So, but then like having an opportunity for you all to connect with different mages that were part of this culture of this thing. So as you're at the feast, some of those conversations were able to happen, kind of thing. So that was definitely like a world building thing, but also trying to give you information and lore about what was going on and let people flex their muscles a little bit in the skill range. Um, that Festival of the Raven Queen, also, you mentioned, that was really solely world building in the end. It didn't seem like it gripped the group, and there was kind of an urgency to get out of the town. So the actual festival was held while you guys were on a ship, and so nothing really happened like on the ship there. But it was one of those things where it's like, okay, the Raven Queen is part of this world enough that she's being celebrated, during that time. Seasons are passing, and my game, the Festival of the Raven Queen, is kind of in the autumn, like when autumn was starting. That was when this celebration happened. So it was trying to like show the changing of the seasons and the time passing as well. As there were some hooks in there that didn't get grabbed onto, and that's totally cool. But that can be a thing where it's just like part of the backdrop, of the world, that doesn't necessarily push the story anywhere. It just like fleshes that out. Um, the one shot that we released, the curator module, the end of that is a feast, and for the one shot, it's just like kind of the resolve. And I think that's a good way to use feasts a lot of times too, is like maybe it's a resolution of, you all did something heroic, you're being celebrated. Because a lot of times, which I think is a very real life thing too, where it's like a lot of cool stuff can happen and people don't really get celebrated for those things that they're doing. It happens in games a lot too, where you're like, we like nearly died to get this, gold statue for you, and like, you're like, okay, cool, here's your pay, and you move on. And I think that's a fun way to like celebrate the heroics of a party, and to kind of resolve an arc or a an adventure, and kind of like looking at the arc thing that we talked about last week. Like, how do you resolve it? How do you start one? How do you plan? I think a feast or celebration is a really good way to like hinge that, because so that had been played out by in a different campaign, and that was an arc change where the stuff had happened in the city. There was this feast, and what I did was, it was that bringing in of people who weren't normally in the city, and the party met this mage who had a job for them. It's like, oh, I see you've taken care of this. Maybe we could work together. I have some things I need done, and then that's where the story
Right.
went, was with him. So you have chances for that, where you all were at like, dining, being celebrated at this table, and he happened to be sitting next to a few of you, and it's like, maybe we could talk about this. And then my final one, I think these four are how I've used this before. There was a Pathfinder game I ran for students here, and several years ago, and it was very character driven. I don't need to tell all the background, but it was basically a community that was kind of, there was a lot of scarcity a lot of times, but they had this like first brewing holiday that they would put on every time when it was like the first of their vineyards gave produce, and they would do this, and it was like one of those like 3-day things. But I had a character who was what was called a dare chaser. I don't know if that was the class or a prestige class, or like what exactly where that fit into, but it was dare chaser was his like way of
Hmm.
talking about what he played. And so it was a very competitive driven. like even like normal battles, it was like, how do I add a more exciting element in order to
Hmm.
chase, or like that. It was really fun to watch Derek play that. But for him, it was really for him that was placed there. Like they were there, there was a story going on in the city, but that was about like there are competitions that go on at this thing because that's who is being like celebrated. And so he got to jump in and like do the things his character was built for. And I think that's kind of a fun thing too, because there's
Yeah.
a lot of things that people build their characters toward, and sometimes it doesn't quite get. It's like I can't always be pandering, maybe not be the right word, but I can't always be like specifically focusing on this one thing. But when we can throw those kind of things in there, that's like a cool experience for a character to be like, oh yeah, these things I've built toward or my abilities that I have are actually getting used for this kind of story element. And that was a really fun one too.
Yeah, I think it's cool to see how feasts have been used and to see some of ours. And we hope we've given you some ideas on how
Yeah.
to use feasts and what feasts looks like. Before we go off of our Thanksgiving special today, we do have some feast related questions, some
Yeah.
Thanksgiving related questions in our haversack that we're going to just jump into for a little bit here today. We told you this was going to be shorter, but if we're not careful, we're going to go the full length of time, aren't we?
Yeah. Yeah. I want to say too, on our Instagram and Twitter, I'm going to post some links to some more canon feasts and celebrations that are like Pathfinder, D&D, in case like, we're trying
Mhm.
to spark ideas here for you all, but maybe these will help. And even the more canon, sometimes we want to do specific things like that. So hopefully that'll be a help too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But looking here at our questions, so uh, these came in from Wataya Hotel, and he says this. This is Haversack question: Planes, Trains, and Automobiles edition. Dear Matthew and Adam, happy Thanksgiving. Wishing you a great celebration and a hero's feast worth of food. In the spirit of your special, I wanted to ask a few rapid fire Thanksgiving related questions. So the first one is this: as a GM, what are you most thankful for? Maybe there's a mechanic, system, or GM in your life that you're especially thankful toward.
All right. I don't know. I should have had an answer ready for this one, shouldn't I? As a GM, what am I most thankful for?
Mhm.
See, here's the thing. I typically, you know how we talk about how you can delegate out to people and you can say, "Hey, I want you to look up what does this do? What does that do?" I do that all the time, and I rarely play spellcasters, or if I do, they're those ones with the limited little spells, and so
Mhm.
I don't know that I would think of a favorite spell. If I think of a favorite mechanic or system, I don't know. Adam, why don't you take this one first?
Yeah.
You got anything?
Um, well, I'm gonna be a softie here, and I am thankful. What I am very thankful for is the more I talk to people who game, watch like watch people or like interact with gamers. Basically, I have understood how unique it is to have like a long term group like that I know
Hmm.
is not everybody's thing, whether it's like giant pauses in, it's like, well, we didn't meet for 15 years and then we started playing again, or whether it's like, I moved and I haven't been able to find anybody, or those, or just whatever. I'm super thankful for that, to go
Yeah.
that tact, like to be able to have a group of people that I care about. Like I know like we love gaming together, we love being together, and that's been like a constant thing. So I'm grateful that started a very long time ago and has continued.
And I
So
can actually throw something in here, and that is I'm thankful for all of the systems that we've played through.
mm,
And that sounds kind of funny because I can tell you I hated 4E when we got to 4E.
Mhm.
But we started off, as we've mentioned on here before, in this little homebrew version called WAV, which was 2D6. And you
Mhm.
just throw it and
Yeah.
learn that way. But then we got into D&D 3.5, I think it was, and I had some experience with advanced D&D back in the day, just more creation than actually playing through at that point. And Pathfinder, and then now up to, we went through 4E and had to endure that terribleness, but we got to 5E. And the reason I can say I'm thankful for all that stuff is I do believe it gives you like this, there are many ways to play, and it gives you this full breadth of finding like what is exciting for you. I do like 5E in that it simplifies enough that storytelling can kind of jump in center stage. 4E, they tried to do that and they dumbed it down too much, and there wasn't enough variety for me.
Mhm.
One thing I loved about Pathfinder and D&D 3.5 was I loved getting all those books and sifting through all those rules and finding all those items and understanding, the incredibly complicated way that skills and spells and 400 dice in a roll, by the time you got your haste and your rage and your this and your that, and you had this handful of dice and you would just drop them and do massive damage and get to calculate all that. I know that that was a little harder for new people to get into, and that's why they went to something like 5E, but I was very thankful to kind of have those times, because for me, sitting at the table was fun, but so was the entire week leading up to sitting at the table, when I'm sitting there reading through just book after book, trying to find the exact right feat that it's going to
Yeah.
make my player amazing. And like
Uh-huh.
the dreaming, they say dopamine comes from the anticipation more than from the actual getting. For
Mhm.
me, it was the anticipation of how great my guy was going to be, just filled me with joy to think of those stories. And then
Yep.
when I actually get to the table and roll a bunch of ones and don't do so awesome,
Yeah.
that was
Mhm.
it was the anticipation of. And so those books and getting, having to figure through all that stuff
Mhm.
was something that I was actually thankful for. I enjoyed those
Yeah.
older. And so I would say to you who have only started in 5E, and again, we're talking mainly D&D here, but remember, there's lots of other games out there that are awesome too. But I would suggest finding some of those other games and finding some of those other systems. Maybe even going back and having a throwback where you play Pathfinder 1, or go back
Mhm.
if anybody has D&D 3.5 books, go back and play that once. It'll
Yeah.
be a
Yeah.
little confusing for you at times. You'll be like, what the heck? Why is this a check? Why are they making me do this? In D&D 5e, we don't have to do this. And it's like, well, this is different.
Yeah. Yep.
And so there could be some goodness in there for you, but it kind of goes along with that, having a group of guys that we could solidly be comfortable playing with. We could kind of switch and go through different systems and try things and know that we had each other's back and we were there for each other and
Mhm.
supportive and all of that. And that
Yeah.
was part of the fun, going through all those different kinds of
Yeah. Yeah.
systems. So when
Yep.
you say, is there a mechanic or a system, it made me think of those kind of more complicated mechanics and systems that I did
Mhm.
love as well. So.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yeah. The second question from Wataya Hotel is, which Pathfinder D&D spell? So this one's directly for you, Matthew. Which
Yeah, for
Pathfinder
me.
D&D spell do you think would be the most useful to prepare a Thanksgiving meal?
Well, I would go one of two directions. If I'm going really boring, again, I'm going to tell you, I would always just assume that somebody else who was the wizard knew all the spells, and I never had to deal with those. But if I had to guess as to which would be the most, I would either go like the super small one, which is prestidigitation. You're like making things.
Mhm.
From what I gathered, it like can clean a soup, but it can also do like
You do all
little
like
light
cooking and chopping and
light
everything, right?
cooking and
Yeah.
chopping
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
some of that stuff. The
Uh-huh.
unseen servant might be one there.
Oh,
You
that's a
get
good one.
him,
Yeah.
you do that, and you get him going and cooking while you go do whatever. Or if you really want to get it done quick, fireball, right? It's served, everybody. What is that? Dragon turkey? It sure is. It was. Now it's burnt dragon turkey.
Oh,
So
that's awesome. Yeah.
I don't know. Do you have anything better in there?
I thought you were going to totally steal. So prestidigitation was definitely one of them for that idea. But
Mm-hmm.
um, Watai actually mentioned this phrase, but Heroes Feast, it costs a lot, but it would knock it out, So that could be a good one too.
I don't even think I know what Hero's Feast is.
Yeah, it's a Heroes Feast is amazing. It depends on the system; things change a little bit, but you basically create a feast, and everybody eats it. Takes like an hour to eat, and you get all these like bonuses. And I think in
Huh.
5e, it's like temporary hit points, like Please don't send me bad emails because I'm messing this up. But it's like, you can't be afraid, or you get like advantage, or, it's like, it's pretty beastly. It's an awesome thing in 5e.
So it's a thing you have to do, but you have to be thinking an hour in advance, which is why I probably never see it, because our characters don't typically think, I'm going to do something now in hopes that in an hour we need this, because you don't know.
Right.
Unless you're trapped in a room and there's goblins all around. You're like, hey guys, let's have a feast real quick. This is going to help.
Yeah. It's definitely okay, we're about to throw down with something huge. We need to prep, kind of thing.
That's kind of cool. Yeah.
My cleric in your game in the Dormant Mind has that ability, but I don't think I've whipped it out yet because we haven't been in that position. So
yet.
I was thinking, this isn't a spell, but for some reason that like the jug that you can like, get like 20 gallons of mayonnaise out of, or that kind of thing. I think that'd be kind of a funny aspect.
It's so limited though, in like making a whole meal. You've got olive oil, you've got alcohol, you've got vegetable oil. Maybe
you can get some gravy,
mayonnaise. And acid is one of the things. Whoops, wrong gravy. Sorry, everybody.
That's awesome. Third question. What creature do you think would make the worst Thanksgiving guest?
What creature? I mean, what creature would make a good Thanksgiving guest?
That's true.
I'm going to just go with the first thing that comes to mind, and that is a dire mustard jelly.
That's not mustard.
That's not mustard. Don't eat that. That's not jelly. Don't eat that.
I think it could go badly no matter what. But I feel like was there a creature called the Filcher or something like that? It like steals your stuff. You remember that?
I believe there was.
Pops out of another plane,
food?
Steals your stuff. Well, we'll say for this, our purposes here, it would steal the turkey or the ham or whatever.
Steal the food and then just take off.
And go away and be like, come on, man. So that's my call here.
Here we go.
Can we expect a first Thanksgiving themed one shot next year? I kind of
heard it here first. Yeah. Turkey Rising. Turkey Uprising. Turkey Uprising. Whole town's scared because the turkey horde has infiltrated the fields all around, and now they're coming for them.
I cannot say for sure whether that would happen or not, but it can definitely be in the thought process. So
the rise of Cthulhu.
Oh man, that's good times. Well, I hope that this idea of feasts, celebrations, festivals, maybe that's helpful to people as you're thinking about your world, different things like that. Hopefully we can encourage you in that. So that was kind of the idea for today. Oh, fun stuff. I wanted to share this really quick before we close out. So last year at Christmas, Matthew got me this.
Oh yes, this is Heroes Feast. I should have remembered that was the title of this book too.
There are a lot of different things, desserts and regular food.
I'll just say this: the cool thing about this is if you got somebody who likes to cook, and Adam does like to cook.
I do.
Yeah. I have made ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches. I think once I tried to make something else. It might have worked, grilled cheese sandwiches. Anyway, I'm not much of a cook, but I thought, the way he likes to cook,
I do.
I thought the reason I got him this gift was I thought, well, if we're ever in person, wouldn't that be cool if we just had like this real feast one day and Adam cooked it all and I could just smell it and eat it? And that's a little self-serving. That wasn't really what I was thinking, but it has like really cool D&D recipes all through it. And Adam has made several. What's been some of your favorites in there?
Big family favorite is the Traveler's Stew. It's like just a really good like meat and vegetable solid stew. There's an elven bread that I'm looking at right here. It's like a dessert bread, like honey and cinnamon and that kind of thing. It's like a roll you cut it open and you can see the swirls through it kind of thing. That was really, really well. I'm actually looking for the Mouche seafood rice, where we like seafood in our house. And that was also one that just got eaten up and stuff. So I've worked through probably everything I've made. I've loved. I've probably done like 10 of the recipes so far over the course of the last 11 months. So I need to be a little more quick on this, but I do like the idea. And you brought this up, Matthew, like one of the earlier episodes, but even that idea of like your group, your table, having meals together, like that being like a cool thing to experience. And whether it's like taking a pause from a long game, like on a Saturday or something, or whether it's just building community, I think those are cool things. So I do hope that one of these days we can maybe make some food beforehand.
Yeah. And in that, in this idea of the feast, I think having that one day when you expect it, you're going to have a long game day, plan a feast, like a real feast, and plan a feast in your game, and see if you can kind of make those two really kind of coincide. Get the smells fill the room, get the taste fill the room, and let the gaming fill the room. So, hey, we're glad you guys could join us here for our Thanksgiving special. Again, we'll be back next week on Thursday at the regular time. And we hope you all have a wonderful day of giving thanks with your family and friends and all of your gaming companions. So have a good Thanksgiving. Thanks for joining us today.
Have a great week.